The diner was already loud and crowded when a tall black soldier in a crisp, worn uniform walked in. His posture was straight, disciplined, and calm, but the moment he stepped through the door, conversations shifted and eyes began to follow him like he didn't belong there. He didn't react. He simply chose a seat near the window and sat down quietly. A waitress named Brittany saw him immediately and her expression changed. Not curiosity, not professionalism, discomfort and irritation. She hesitated for a second, then muttered to another worker that she wouldn't serve someone like that, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. Before we start, hit that like and subscribe button, then comment where you're watching from. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming. Still, she walked over anyway, but only halfway doing her job. No greeting, no warmth. Just a cold, "What do you want?" The soldier looked up calmly and ordered water and the daily special. His voice was steady, respectful. But Brittany didn't write anything down. Instead, she scoffed and told him they were out of the special, even though other customers could clearly see it being served at nearby tables. She lingered longer than necessary, arms crossed, voice dripping with disrespect as she muttered comments about soldiers and entitlement. The room grew tense. People noticed. Some frowned. Others stayed silent, uncomfortable but unwilling to speak up. That's when the manager, Harold, stepped out from the back, his tone immediately sharp. "Brittany, step away from that table." Brittany turned in shock. "What? You're seriously defending him?" Harold didn't answer her. He walked straight to the soldier's table, and the moment he saw his face, his expression changed completely. Recognition. Alarm. Respect. He straightened instantly. "Sir?" The entire diner went quiet. Brittany blinked. "Sir? Why are you calling him sir?" Harold swallowed hard, then spoke louder so everyone could hear. "That is Captain Elijah Cole." The atmosphere shifted instantly. The noise died. Even the kitchen went silent. Brittany froze. "Captain?" Harold didn't stop there. "He's not just any customer. He's a highly decorated officer, and part of an official inspection unit." The soldier, Captain Cole, finally spoke, calm and controlled. "I'm here to evaluate service standards connected to military personnel. Nothing more." His eyes slowly moved across the room. "And so far? I've seen enough." The words hit like a stone dropped into water. Silence spread deeper. Brittany's confidence cracked as she realized what she had just done in front of everyone. Harold turned to her immediately. "You're suspended. Right now." Brittany opened her mouth, but no words came out. Captain Cole stood slowly, adjusting his uniform. He didn't look angry. He didn't raise his voice. That was what made it worse. "I wasn't here to test your food," he said quietly. "I was here to test your respect." Then he placed a small identification card on the table and turned to leave. As he walked out, the entire diner stayed frozen, until Harold picked up the card and looked at it properly. His face drained of color. This wasn't just an inspection badge. It carried federal authorization tied to a wider internal investigation. Harold whispered, almost to himself, "This is bigger than I thought." Brittany's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" Before he could answer, the front door opened again. Another uniformed officer stepped inside. This time, no one spoke at all. He scanned the room slowly, then walked directly to Harold, speaking in a low, urgent tone that made Harold's eyes widen even more. "Captain Cole's visit," he explained, "wasn't isolated. It was part of a larger operation tracking patterns of misconduct across multiple establishments, and they had reason to believe that someone connected to this diner was already under active federal review." The room felt colder. Brittany stood completely still, her breath shallow, as the weight of everything began to settle in. What she thought was just a bad interaction was now turning into something far bigger than her job, her attitude, or even this diner. And then the second officer slowly opened his folder. A name was about to be revealed. The lights flickered once. And the front door slowly opened again. The moment the front door opened again, the entire diner felt like it stopped breathing, because standing there wasn't just another officer, but a man in a dark suit carrying a sealed black folder marked with the Defense Command insignia, and without saying a word he walked straight past the shocked customers and stopped in front of Harold, placing the folder on the counter like it weighed more than metal, while Brittany stood frozen behind the register still trying to process how a simple refusal to serve a customer had turned into something that now felt like a federal storm closing in on her life. And when Harold finally opened the folder, his hands visibly shook as he read the contents, his eyes widening with every line, because inside were documented reports of multiple incidents across several locations, all tied to complaints of discrimination, denial of service, and misconduct toward military personnel. But what made his stomach drop wasn't just the pattern, it was the list of names under investigation, and one of them was already sitting inside the diner. A heavy silence swallowed the room as Harold slowly looked up from the file toward Brittany, who suddenly felt her legs weaken under her, while Captain Elijah Cole remained calm near the exit, watching everything unfold without a word, like he already knew how this would end. And the officer in the suit finally spoke, his voice low but sharp, confirming what everyone feared. This wasn't a routine inspection anymore. It was an active federal integrity sweep designed to identify institutions and individuals undermining service members, and every action inside this diner had been recorded from the moment Captain Cole stepped through the door. Brittany shook her head quickly, panic rising in her chest. No, this is not fair. But her words collapsed under the weight of the evidence already stacked against her, because Harold had now reached the final page, and what he read made him step back in disbelief, revealing that complaints matching her behavior had been flagged before, but never properly escalated until now, and Captain Cole's visit was the final verification step that triggered the investigation to move forward. The officer in the suit closed the folder slowly. "We're placing this location under review, effective immediately," he said, and just like that, the atmosphere inside the diner changed from shock to irreversible reality, customers quietly standing up, some leaving without finishing their meals, others watching like they were witnessing the collapse of something they never thought would fall. Harold turned toward Brittany, his voice no longer angry, but disappointed. "You didn't just disrespect a customer, you triggered something that goes far beyond this job." Brittany's eyes filled with tears as she looked around, realizing no one was on her side anymore, not even the people who once laughed with her, while Captain Cole finally spoke again from the doorway, his voice steady but heavier than before. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," he said. "I came here to see if people still recognize dignity when it's standing right in front of them in a uniform." Then he paused, letting the words settle like a final judgment that didn't need anger to hurt. The officer in the suit then turned slightly, signaling to the team outside, and two more agents entered the diner, one carrying a sealed evidence box, the other holding a list of additional locations to be visited, confirming that this was only one stop in a much larger operation already in motion. And as they began documenting the scene, Brittany finally broke down completely, covering her face as everything she had said and done replayed in her mind like a sentence she could no longer undo. But just as she thought it was over, Captain Cole stopped at the door one last time and turned back, his eyes meeting hers, not with hatred, but something more complicated. "People think consequences arrive to punish," he said quietly, "but sometimes they arrive to expose what was already there." And then he left. The diner was officially shut down for investigation that same night, but the real shock came days later when Harold received a final notice from Federal Command, stating that Captain Cole's mission had uncovered not just isolated misconduct, but a coordinated pattern of violations across multiple establishments, and Brittany's name, along with others, had been forwarded for formal review. Yet the story didn't end there. Because weeks later, as Harold stood outside the now-closed diner, preparing to hand over the keys, another envelope arrived with no return address, only a single line printed on the front, "Case reopened under expanded scope." Inside was one sentence that made his hands go cold. Captain Cole had requested a follow-up inspection, and this time, it included a name no one had expected to appear again. The diner never reopened the same way again after that night, because within days it was officially shut down pending federal review, and what started as a single complaint about disrespect had now expanded into a full investigation that reached far beyond one building or one mistake, while Brittany sat at home replaying every word she had said to Captain Elijah Cole, realizing too late that her assumptions had cost her not just her job, but her entire reputation in a way she could no longer undo. And Harold, once the proud manager of a busy roadside diner, now stood in front of an empty storefront staring at a sealed door marked with an investigation notice, knowing that everything he thought he understood about his workplace had been quietly exposed and recorded long before anyone realized what was happening. Weeks passed in silence, until one morning Harold received an official clearance letter stating that the diner investigation had concluded its first phase, and while disciplinary actions would follow for several individuals, the operation had uncovered something unexpected that shifted the entire purpose of Captain Cole's mission. Because what began as testing customer service toward military personnel had revealed a deeper pattern of coordinated disrespect and systemic negligence across multiple locations tied to the same supply network, forcing higher authorities to widen the scope of the operation beyond anyone's expectations. But the most unexpected part came in the final paragraph of the report. Captain Elijah Cole had requested one final follow-up visit, not as an inspector this time, but in a personal capacity, because among all the locations investigated, one stood out for a reason no one fully understood yet, and that location was the very diner where everything began, and even more surprising was the name listed beside it. Brittany. Harold read the line 3 times, unsure if he was understanding it correctly, because according to the file, Brittany was no longer being viewed only as an offender in the incident, but also as a potential subject of reconsideration under a rehabilitation and accountability program being tested for cases involving bias and misconduct in civilian service roles, meaning her story wasn't finished yet. It was just changing direction. And then came the final twist that no one expected. On the evening before the follow-up visit, Brittany received a plain envelope at her door with no sender information, only a single typed message inside: "People are not defined by their worst moment, but by what they choose after it." No signature. No explanation. But she already knew who it was from. The next day, she returned to the closed diner for the first time since everything collapsed, standing outside the locked doors with trembling hands as she saw a black vehicle pull up slowly in front of her, and when the door opened, Captain Elijah Cole stepped out. But this time there was no crowd, no inspection team, no tension of authority, just silence between two people who had once stood on opposite sides of judgment. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You don't get erased for what happened," he said quietly, "but you do get a choice about what comes after it." Brittany couldn't answer immediately, her voice caught between shame and relief, but she finally nodded slightly, because for the first time since that day, she wasn't being defined by the mistake, but by the possibility of what she could become after it. Captain Cole turned slightly toward the empty diner, then back at her. "This place will reopen," he said, "but not as it was." He paused. "And neither will you." As the sun set behind them, the camera would have slowly pulled back from the quiet street, the closed diner, and the two figures standing in front of it, one carrying the weight of authority, the other carrying the weight of consequence. But both standing at the edge of something new, something unfinished, something that hinted that this was not the end of the story, but the beginning of a second chance no one saw coming. Comment below if you know you enjoyed the story. Also don't forget to follow, subscribe and turn on the notification button for more stories coming up.